speaker is Mr. Kang Eugene, Group Chief Technology Officer of PLUS Malaysia Berhad. He has over 28 years of experience in IT and has led recognitions including PCOM CIO of the year 2015, IDG Top 50 Asian CIO in 2019 and 2020. He has rolled out innovations for the industry like Hong Leong Connect's mobile-to-mobile money transfer service to any local mobile number in 2014 and implementing a regional database private cloud for Hong Leong Bank. He spent the last 5 years working on the cloud and has experience running workloads in AWS, Google Cloud, and Huawei Cloud. Please welcome Mr. Kang Eugene.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So I'm going to share my slide and hopefully you can see it. Yeah, so can you see my slides?
Yep, it's clear.
Okay, so I have a very short, maybe about 9-10 slides, basically to run through PLUS journey to the cloud. Okay, so if it's okay with you guys, I will just zoom straight in. Okay, so if you do not know who PLUS is, if you drive to Malacca or you drive all the way to Penang, and if you use the North-South Highway, that's basically the PLUS network, right? So PLUS is a highway operator. We run, you know, the largest or the longest highway from north to south, and we also own a few other smaller highways, So I think NKV is owned by us. Jabatan Pulau Pinang, that picture that you see in my background, that link is actually owned by us, and a few other smaller highways, which many years ago, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our journey, and our journey to the cloud started about 4 or 5 years ago. And you know, in the past, we've had a very small footprint in our data center, right? So we had this. So our head office is actually called Persada Plus. So if you use the NKVE and if you see that big building on the left side of the highway when you're near the Subang Toll, that's the PLUS corporate quarters. So it's actually called Persada Plus. So we actually have a small a server room there. I wouldn't even call it a data center, right? So it's a small server room, and we started with maybe about a small footprint, about 12 physical blades. We've got a secondary server room in Bukit Beruntung, so quite fairly small setup. And then we started to do virtualization, and we've implemented workloads. So throughout the years, because we've did everything on-prem, we've suffered things like inability to scale, and then a few years ago our hardware started to get end of life and all that. So and also PLUS has started to do a lot of digital transformation. So we started to move into areas like AI, do things like image recognition and all that. So I've got a couple of demos to show you. So we all realize that when we do everything on in-house and on-prem, the ability and the flexibility that we have with our computing resources, there are some limitations. So that started our journey to the cloud. Okay, so this is an actual slide. The only thing I did was I removed the numbers, right? But if you just ignore the numbers, so this is a slide that I actually built for finance, right? This is a cost consumption slide, right? So the only thing missing is numbers, right? So you cannot tell how much I'm spending, right? But if you just look at it from scale perspective, or you look at it from the perspective that the scale is slowly climbing up. Basically, this chart paints a picture, and the picture that it paints is, we started our journey way back in 2018, and we had one small application that we started developing in 2018. So you can see, right, the workload from 2018 started a little bit small, and then it went live, I think, sometime in 2019. So that's why when it went live, you can see the cloud consumption actually goes up. And then we started to migrate more. So for those of you who are familiar with the cloud, it's a pay as you use, meaning if you run one server for 1 hour, you pay for the cost of that server for 1 hour. If you run 10 servers for 10 hours, then you pay more lah. So if you look at this chart, basically just by seeing the bar chart going up tells you a story that yes, we started from way back in 2018, we slowly started with one application, and the cloud consumption is quite low because at the start is development, and then as we started to be a bit more mature, we started to move more things into the cloud now. So 2018, 2019, you can see that we have been progressively migrating. Then you will see in 2020, agak-agak the bar chart starts to stabilize. So that tells you also another story. So the story that this tells you is we basically finished migrating as much as we wanted to the cloud in early 2020 lah. So you can see the cloud costs actually stabilize, right? Then after that, you will see things. You will see that middle of last year, the cloud costs started to go down. Okay, and you're probably wondering, what does that mean? Does it mean you started to migrate out of the cloud? So as you know, we went into MCO last year. So this also tells a story that that aligns with the pay-as-you-go storyline in the cloud. So as I mentioned, right, cloud consumption, you pay as you go. So the more you consume the cloud, the more you pay. So with less traffic on the road, because the government only, the government introduced lockdown and then no interstate travel, right? So to a certain extent, when we had less interstate travel, we had less consumption of the computing capabilities. So that also tells the story that you can see the cost that we paid to the cloud actually reduces because we had less traffic, right? So I only plotted this to June, and you know, the government announced that interstate travel is allowed, I think a few weeks ago. So if I were to plot the October traffic, you will see the traffic actually going up a little bit, right? So that's how to contextualize this slide. But the most important thing to mention to you is the fact that we have migrated a lot of our stuff to the cloud, and it took us about 2 to 3 years to migrate fully to the cloud, right? But not fully, but I think about 90% of our workload runs in the cloud. So if you're probably wondering, hey, what is PLUS running in the cloud? So this is a snapshot of what we currently run, right? We are multi-cloud, so we predominantly. So the word multi-cloud means we don't only use one cloud provider, and I have a slide that shows you what the different cloud providers are used. But our biggest workloads actually run in Microsoft Azure, okay? So and this is a snapshot to tell you what we are running, right? So if you look at this slide, it basically says I have about 250 virtual machines. So virtual machine is almost like a server, right? So yeah, so I have about 250 servers. I've got some software as a service. I'm even doing things like Kubernetes. I'm running, if I look at SQL virtual machines, I'm running SQL Server on some of the virtual machines. And then I have Azure SQL database, which is an example of database as a service that I'm using, right? So in essence, I'm doing a lot of things in the cloud, and this chart basically gives you a flavor. So I'm not going to go in and explain to you what SQL Pool is, what is Synapse Analytics is, right? But you know, just to give you a flavor of the kind of things that we run in the cloud. So that's why when I say we are about 90% running from the cloud, yes, we run very little things on-prem right now. Okay, and this slide basically talks about why we moved to the cloud. And to put it simplistically, the few reasons why we moved to the cloud is because of 3 reasons. Number one is we found out that there's a lot of economic benefits. So as the number of things that we wanted to do, as the amount of digital transformation that we wanted to do, obviously there's a lot of need for computing power, and you know, if I were to really do this on-prem, then I have to buy more servers. In fact, maybe what I even need to do is I may need to expand my server room and make it to be maybe like a full-blown data center. So the fact that I'm actually utilizing the cloud a lot, I save on real estate. So I don't have to spend in terms of physical space or renting space or renting a data center. I save in terms of power and cooling, because all those go towards the cloud consumption. And in terms of resources to actually manage the servers is also reduced. Okay, and security, there's a couple of aspects. There is the infra security, which I do have some stuff, but there's also physical security that I don't have to worry about, right? So for those of you who run your own data center, you know that you need, especially the physical data center needs to also be guarded, right? So you know you need to have physical security guards running 24/7 shift and all that. So those are things that we save on because we move things on the cloud. But more importantly is this bullet point here, which is better handling of capacity. And I've got a little diagram that shows you what we mean by better handling of capacity. So you just hang on for about 30 seconds, right? The second big advantage that we see is movement from CapEx to OpEx. So from the previous slide, you can already see that we pay as you go, right? So if I use more, I pay the cloud more, and if I use less, I pay less. Right, and basically what we do is we get a monthly bill and we pay as much as we do. So the shift, if you're running things on-prem, you basically need to have a cycle where you buy servers upfront, and then you need to have some ability to predict the amount of workload that you actually run, right? And if you've got patterns that have peaks and troughs, then if you run things on-prem, you have to make sure that you've planned for the right capacity and you buy enough servers to tahan those peaks and troughs of your workload, right? So some finance people like the OpEx approach because it means less investment upfront. So that's one of the biggest benefits, okay. But another benefit of the cloud is agility, right? So maybe not so apparent, but agility actually, there's probably simplistically two aspects to it. Number one is from a capacity perspective. That gives you some ability. So for example, if you run things on-prem and suddenly, let's say your traffic spikes, and you didn't plan properly, right? Then you will suffer because your machines on premise has less capacity. But if you're doing things in the cloud, then essentially your capacity is almost infinite, right? It's as much capacity as the cloud provider gives you, right? So each cloud location, the vendor gives you essentially ability to have thousands of servers at your fingertips if you wanted to. Right, so for the ability to scale very fast to handle sudden spikes in traffic is one of the biggest benefits of the cloud. But one thing which a lot of people don't talk about is innovation services. So when you use the cloud capabilities, there are a lot of things in the cloud that that you can just turn on, right? And these are software as a service processing capabilities. So I mentioned that PLUS is moving into AI and all that, and so like I've mentioned, I've got a couple of demos that show you that all those things we actually use cloud service, and we had an option of going out looking for software, implementing it ourselves. But that takes time, that takes evaluation, right? The other option we had was, let's take a look and see what the cloud provider provides. If they've got those kind of AI capabilities, we can always turn it on, test it out. If you don't like it, just shut it down now, right? So that's what we did, right? So you will find that cloud providers do provide a lot of innovative services, okay? Now, so from a capacity perspective, this is the chart that I wanted to show you, right? In terms of why cloud is a lot more flexible. So if you run IT traditionally, and if you do things on-prem, then basically you need to have a chart that looks like this, right? You have to plan your IT capacity across time. And usually when you plan your capacity, it looks a little bit like this. So when you start, maybe your capacity is low, and through time, as time moves on, you expect a lot of people would use your services more. So when they use your services more, they consume more of your services. Okay, but when you buy hardware, when you have a CapEx approach, basically your CapEx approach is such that every time you buy one server, you get a step-up approach. If you buy 2 servers, that's your capacity. If you buy 3 servers, right? So that's what this chart shows if you do CapEx. But when you actually run your actual workload, you will find that your workload doesn't match what you buy, right? So sometimes the capacity will be up, sometimes the will be down. So you'll find situations that maybe capacity is lower than what you bought. So for example, in this case, if you bought 2 servers and for a few months your capacity is low, then in essence what you've done is you've actually overbought. Okay, so that's why it shows you have wasted capacity, right? And then suddenly maybe you're running an e-commerce site, then Singles Day 11/11 comes, right? Then your traffic shoots up. Then you realize, alamak, your 2 servers is tak cukup capacity, right? So you get this kind of capacity shortage situation. Okay, so this is what happens when you run things on-prem, right? But when you do cloud deployment, as mentioned, right, and as shown in the previous slide, the capacity actually matches your actual usage, right? So you get a chart that looks a little bit like that. So the 2 lines almost match. Why? Because you use capacity that's on demand, right? Rather than you buy upfront, if you need it, you turn it on. So just like the MCO chart that I showed you just now, right? When we had less traffic, we turn off the servers, or we reduce the consumption capacity, right? And when we do that, we save a little bit more. So that's what this slide actually tells you. The other benefit of going to the cloud is the ability to run your workloads all around the world. Not something that I would recommend that you do, but it's an ability that the cloud vendors give you. Like so for PLUS, when we use the cloud providers, that opens up abilities for us to run workloads all around the world. But from a very natural perspective, we don't do stupid things like run our workloads in Korea or in the US lah. Okay, so most of our workloads run in the nearest data center, which is actually in Singapore. And so for DR, we actually use Hong Kong or sometimes Korea lah. So that's basically what we do, but what the cloud providers give you they do give you that capacity. So it really depends on your business, right? So for PLUS, because our highway is locally in Malaysia, so for us, that's why we choose the 2 nearest data centers, right? But if you are, for example, e-commerce site, and you've got customers all around the world, then you may want to choose that. Hey, if you find that you got a lot of customers from the US, then you may want to run your workload in the US. So that's one of the benefits of using a cloud provider lah. Okay, now okay, so when you use the cloud, you may have seen a chart that looks like this from cloud providers, right? So this chart basically says when you run your workload on-prem, this is basically what you need to manage. You need to manage from the bottom network, storage, servers, and then you also need to jaga your own applications and your own data. So that's what happens when you run things on-premise. Okay, but as you start to move to the cloud, you can then choose to move a lot of things to the cloud provider. So if you're a local cloud provider, chances are the local cloud provider may only give you infrastructure as a service, but some of the more international providers don't only give you infrastructure as a service, they also give you platform as a service, right? Or software as a service. So infra as a service means you go to the cloud provider, you say, hey, I want to run some workload, give me a few servers and I'll run that workload. So that's what the cloud provider does. They give you infrastructure as a service, right? But some of the more advanced cloud providers, usually it's the international providers, they not only give you infra, but they also give you some applications or things like database, right? So instead of you buying your own, let's say, database Oracle license or SQL Server license, then run it on the infrastructure, you can actually go to the cloud provider and say, can you give me an instance of SQL Server or an instance of Oracle as a database, and I rent that from you. So you can do that. And then software as a service is where you go to the cloud provider and they give you the full spectrum, right? So this is where applications, in fact, some of you are already using it and you probably don't know it. So if you are using Office 365, that's an example of software as a service. Okay, so if you're using Word, Office 365 and Word, all that actually is rented out by Microsoft. If you're using Gmail, right, or Google Mail, that's an example of software as a service. Okay, so what this chart shows you is when you use cloud providers, you do have a spectrum of capabilities that you can tap on the cloud providers. And some of these capabilities maybe is provided by the more international vendors because obviously they're a lot more mature. And as they provide more capabilities, this gives you more ability to scale and more agility. So that's basically what this chart tells you. So specifically for PLUS, so I've only got a couple more slides to go. So specifically for PLUS, what do we do? I mentioned just now that we are multi-cloud, but we are also hybrid cloud. So if you're probably wondering, hey, why so many terminologies, right? So hybrid means I do run some workload on-prem, and I also do run some workload in the cloud. So in our situation here in PLUS, we run some non-critical workloads, predictive workloads, simple things that maybe don't really need disaster recovery, simple small applications that don't really need the vast amount of scalability. Those I actually run on-prem. Okay, then those things that require the scalability, those that I need to run software as a service, you know, I actually run in the cloud. So as I mentioned just now earlier, I'm 80-90% in the cloud, right? And I'm multi-cloud because while if I look at all the workload that I run in the cloud, again, 80 or 90% of my cloud workload runs in Azure, but I do have some smaller footprints that run in a few other clouds. So I've got a slide that shows that. Okay, so in fact, it's this slide. So you can see, right, I mentioned what I run on-prem is some kucing kurap applications, you know, those that don't really require things to scale. Simple applications like my print server, my meeting room booking systems, my CCTV, those are actually run on-prem. But anything, the toll systems, right? So when you go and, you know, travel to Penang and you go and use the tolls, all the applications that require scale actually runs in the cloud. And as mentioned, out of all the things that run in the cloud, 80-90% runs in Azure. I do have some things that run in Google Cloud. So if you use our chatbot and all that, if you use Google Maps and things like that, those we actually use from Google. We actually do use Oracle Cloud because a lot of our internal back office applications, we use the Oracle backend application. So that actually runs in Oracle Cloud. But a lot of the AI stuff that we do actually runs in Amazon, right? So we use Amazon SageMaker to do all our machine learning models for ANPR and VAVC. So ANPR stands for Automatic Number Plate Recognition. VAVC stands for Vehicle Analytics and Vehicle Classification. Okay, and I've got the last two slides that actually explain a little bit more. So this is an example of the software as a service that we actually use in the cloud. We are actually deploying this. In fact, this is going live in a few days' time. Hold on now. Right, so this is an example where we do number plate recognition. So you can see SAB 386. So when a car goes past, we immediately recognize the number plate. Okay, all this software runs in the cloud, right? And the training of the AI, the training of the machine learning, right, in terms of telling the machine how to recognize the number plate and all that, that software actually runs in the cloud. Okay, could I have gone out and selected my own software and implemented it locally or implemented it in the cloud? I could, right? But this is why using some cloud providers give you that benefit, because they've got tons of very interesting software that allows you to be innovative very fast, right? So that's one thing that we use. So that was an ANPR example. This is a VAVC example. So you can see, right, when we go past, we detect that this is a truck. We detect that this is I don't even know what brand is UD, but you saw the previous. We detect. Yeah, so that's what we detect. We classify the vehicles that basically come. So over here we detect that the Proton logo, we detect the number plate, right? So this is Isuzu, the previous example. So through this we save from manpower, because exactly what's happening right now is actually this is being done manually currently. That means somebody actually looks and then says, oh, okay, this is a truck, this is a, you know, so you can imagine the amount of manual work that we do right now. But when we deploy systems like this, where it can do automatic recognition, then that saves us a lot of manual labor. So that's all that I have. I only have about 10-11 slides. Any questions so far?
Thank you, Mr. Kang, for the presentation. We will open the floor for Q&A session. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and post your questions, or alternatively, you could also type in the chat box.
Okay, I see no questions. Does PLUS have any sensitive data, like ANPR, that better be stored on-prem? Does PLUS have a policy? Okay, so we do have some policies. So things like customer data, we actually do store it on-prem. Anything that has no customer data, we use it in the cloud. So for example, we work quite closely with Touch and Go. As you know, when you go past our tolls, you use the Touch and Go. And now soon we're going to be, so things like customer data and all that, we actually don't store in the cloud, because we get those data from Touch and Go. So there's an agreement with Touch and Go that we store it on-prem. So those data residency actually is on-prem. Okay. Does PLUS have a policy whereby cloud ASP can? Yeah, basically I've covered it. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. There's one more question. Let me see. How does analytics help PLUS in the operational environment? So there's a lot of there's a lot of things that we are doing, right? So I think in the vehicle analytics, this helps to hopefully reduce manpower in the future, right? So that's something that we intend to do. For the number plate recognition, I'm just wondering why the video is not playing. Okay, but anyway, you've seen the video. So for the number plate recognition, this is even more exciting, right? Because as you know, in the Klang Valley, RFID has already been rolled out to a number of non-PLUS tolls. Okay, so if you use the LDP, Lebuh Damansara Puchong, there is RFID, right? And a lot of people ask me, alamak, why PLUS Highway got no RFID yet? So the answer is usually a bit more complicated, right? And the answer is because there is a difference between open toll and closed toll, right? So a lot of the highways that you drive on in the Klang Valley is what we call open toll. So open toll means you go past the barrier and immediately you get a charge, and usually it's a fixed charge, right? So that's what happens in LDP, right? So if you drive from one Utama and you exit in Sri Damansara, you get charged RM2.10, right? That's what it means, right? If you go the other opposite direction, you exit in Puchong, you also get charged. I can't remember. So that's an example of open toll. Open toll means fixed charge as long as you pass through. But PLUS operates what we call a closed toll, right? So if you start your journey from Icro and then you exit in Damansara, then actually I don't even know what's the actual amount. I think it's between 10 to 20 ringgit lah, right? So so I'm not the revenue guy. So and the reason why it's called a closed toll, because you have to take your starting point and you take your ending point. Then you got to figure out how many kilometers you travel, and then that's the amount that you charge, right? So could we have made it open toll? Can, but if we had done it open toll, then every few kilometers there'll be a gantry, right? So operationally it doesn't make sense for us. So because it's a closed toll, that's why it took us a while to roll out RFID, because the logic to look after closed toll is a lot more important. We have a lot of scenarios where somebody will muscle the touch and go lane and then exit the RFID lane. Then what happens, right? So this is why we use ANPR, because we want to be able to take images and have evidence that you came in from a non-RFID toll and you exit from an RFID toll. So with that evidence, we can charge you the correct amount, right? Or we can, depends on the rules, right? Or we can penalize you or whatever you want, right? So ANPR gives you that ability, and the ANPR also gives you the ability to stop fraud, because we have scenarios where, and this one usually happens with touch and go cards, right? You have scenarios where, especially on the North-South Highway, those truck operators, they use one touch and go card and then they stop at the rest stop area, they cross the bridge and they pass the touch and go card to somebody else, and then so you get situations where they try to beat the system because they pass around touch and go cards. So when you do ANPR, you have evidence that the guy came in one toll booth and he used touch and go card A, and the number plate that we detect is ABC, and then when he exits, same number plate but different touch and go card. Kena lah. Okay, so these are things that we are planning to do, right? So as mentioned, operational help. So all the image recognition that we do helps in terms of operation, helps from a fraud detection perspective, and then we are also doing image recognition that helps in dangerous situation lah. So like our Penang Bridge, you can see, right? Actually, you can see behind. Right, so those area behind the bridge, if you want to inspect, you either have to get cranes and all that. But in the future, we will use things like drones, right? And then the drones, you can also fly it to areas where it's a bit hard to go and climb, like those mountainous area. And then we can use image technology to detect slope erosion and all that. So the possibilities with image recognition is quite endless lah. So. Yeah. Okay. Any plans to make all PLUS highways to be RFID? Yes. In fact, the northern stretch of Hutan Kampung Sungai Dua, which is Penang stretch, is already with RFID. But come October 31st, we will deploy ANPR to the Hutan Kampung Sungai Dua stretch, right? So that's what's going to happen. And then early next year, the Juru Skudai stretch, which is from Penang all the way to Skudai in JB, will be RFID enabled with automatic number plate recognition. So yeah, so simple answer is yes. And hopefully you also understand why it took us a while, because not easy. It's closed toll versus open toll. The other thing that also made things complicated was because we had some toll locations which is in a very ulu location, right? So sad to say, some of those ulu locations, internet connectivity is not great lah. So there's some strengthening of the network that we need to do lah. Okay, any other questions? So if no other questions, please download the PLUS app. When you download the PLUS app, you can check. You can actually have CCTV footages. You can plan your journey. And you can, at certain rest stop areas, if you are hungry for some Asam Laksa, you can order food upfront, right? And then go and pick it up. So thank you very much.
On behalf of Hong Leong Investment Bank, I would like to thank Mr. Kang for sharing his time and insight with us today.